Awesome, Hesham. Thank you for your time and welcome to another edition of the Pressplay podcast. I have with me the founder of Siin, one of the Middle East's first and pioneering live video commerce platforms. He's based in Bahrain, and welcome to Pressplay.
Thank you so much, Bennett. Thank you for having me. Great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome, man. I mean, we were discussing before the podcast, and you're building a startup in Bahrain. Of course, we would love to know more about yourself and Siin. Uh, However, it's also important to highlight straight away for listeners that we are building and recording this in unprecedented times. I'm based in the UAE. Hisham's based in Bahrain. Why don't we start with a brief introduction about yourself and Siin?
Sure. So great to be here. Hesham AlSaati. I'm part of the founding team of Siin. We're for the uninitiated, let's call them. We are a live shopping platform. People like to think about us as like a combination of eBay and TikTok Shop, like TikTok Live. So in effect, like we've seen, I come from a background of e-commerce. We've seen like a major gap in the market when it comes to a solution that caters to trust and safety, real-time bidding, the entire experience for users. And we've built something that's kind of catered towards that. It's been a great journey so far. And we, because of our presence in Bahrain, it's also allowed us to expand quite rapidly to other markets, given, the experimental nature of being in a small market like Bahrain. You can really, test the waters, see the appetite, see the product market fit. And then based on that, start exporting it in other markets. And I wouldn't say there's a standard playbook, but there's a general way to expand. So, alhamdulillah, and what is it? It has been now a year and a half. We're already in 6 GCC markets. We're moving quite rapidly in terms of all our KPIs, and it's hockey sticking, like they say. So now the growth is, chasing us rather than us chasing growth. So that's a very, very good sign. And also all the headache and all the complexities that come with growing a business. That's been a great learning journey for me as well.
Awesome, man. So, I mean, I've been following the live video commerce space globally. And of course, you started out in China, and we all know how the influencer-led live shopping became a massive thing in the last decade, I would say, starting with China and then, moving on to, let's say, the US, Europe, etc. What was your sort of aha moment that I want to build out a startup in this space?
Yeah, wow. So first of all, I'm not a Gen Z guy. Like, I'm not big on live shopping generally. I should get shot for saying that, running the startup. But I'm actually a minimalist. Like, I don't even collect stuff. And as you know, our beachhead, our initial market was and is currently like collectibles. There were a few moments. I hope we have some time to cover this. But in general, I was part of the Delivery Hero leadership team at the time. I was in Hungerstation, Saudi Arabia, and one of the major gaps we've seen was the e-commerce penetration, just generic e-commerce, versus where it should be, basically based on like retail transactions, etc. The percentage was a third of the global average. So Saudi Arabia had a huge upside potential. And similarly, the numbers, I used to manage Talabat Bahrain and then Hungerstation Saudi. We've also seen a major let's say upside gap in the penetration of users, spend, all that. So all that kind of gave me this indication that there's a there in Saudi Arabia in particular, which is effectively 50% of the consumer spend of the Gulf region. We've had myself and my co-founder who used to be with me on Talabat as well. We had a sheet with 100 ideas. It's called the ideation sheet. When we start working, we just added more ideas. So most of them were terrible ideas, but we had to experiment with them. So one of them was a group buying sort of app, similar to Pinduoduo, how they got started in China. And the more that we got deeper into the different use cases, we've seen that there's a consistent theme of video, live video. Like, that seems to be a component that's very important within all these different startups. And then, we've learned of whatnot in the United States. But that aha moment really came when during COVID, we used to be in the food industry, the food delivery aggregation industry, and that space like occupied us fully because of the growth that we've experienced. But then we've learned that there was a whole phenomenon that occurred on social media channels, particularly Instagram and TikTok, where a lot of social sellers popped up during COVID, where they were
Right.
selling all sorts of goods. You're talking from consigned high-end luxury watches, all the way to your beauty and makeup. They call them tujjar shanta, which is like your traveler sellers, like people who actually take a bag, fill it up with goods, and bring it to wherever, like bring it from Turkey or from Dubai or from China or from wherever, and they start selling those goods. And we've seen that hustle culture start to develop quite well. We didn't know about this at all because like during COVID, I was just incredibly busy with running food. And that's what kind of gave us that aha moment that there is a use case there, despite the friction, despite the low trust, people still adopted that service. So we kind of had this concept of like build it and they will come. Obviously,
Right.
doesn't work that easily. Like there's a captive audience of billions on Instagram versus you're building from 0 to 1. So that's why we've identified like very niche, underserved markets as a beachhead, and that served us quite well to kind of build out an industry that sort of didn't exist. So
Right.
that's in a nutshell, how we've arrived at it.
Oh, fascinating, man. I mean, I think that identifying your sort of moat or your lane, right? I mean, live shopping is such a vast area. And when you think of live shopping, I think of, for example, let's say makeup or beauty or fashion. So it's very interesting that you've actually taken the route of focusing on collectibles. If I'm
Yes.
saying that, that's the
Oh, yeah.
broad category, and
Yeah. If I may, like the broader definition is collectibles, and because our beachhead was pop culture collectibles. So you'd say your Pokemon cards, retro games, Funko Pops, statues, etc. Those sort of like set up there's adjacency towards each one, and
right.
that kind of allowed us to kind of enter different categories. And now, like with the latest one, coins and currency. It seems to be very, very interesting because the user base is quite different in terms of age group, demographic, etc. But there is overlap. Like we see them buying Pokemon cards and One Piece cards. So there's that network effect that's being generated from that, because as soon as you set up the trust and safety layer, all those things come into place. But we've run a plethora of experiments until we've arrived at this conclusion, because we did try electronics, we did try like FMCG. And there's an like you said, it's almost blinding the opportunity size, because like live social shopping is a feature, sort of, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's a huge phenomenon, and it's massively undertapped in the Gulf, like crazy potential.
No, absolutely. I can imagine. I mean, I was always thinking that why the Chinese live shopping sort of area or vertical is not expanding fast enough to markets like India, Middle East, and especially Middle East, because the disposable income is pretty high, right? So, having said that, the idea of building trust is not easy when you have some larger incumbents in the market. So that leads me to my next question. How do you do the trust and verification part of things in your process?
So obviously there's a KYC process that's continuously evolving. We started to incorporate AI, which helped like consolidate, like let's say make things a lot easier in terms of the steps and
Okay.
in terms of the speed and accuracy as well.
Hmm.
And the good thing about the Gulf is from a, let's say, security standpoint, like your phone number is tied to a lot of things with your ID, with your digital ID, let's say, particularly in countries like Saudi, UAE, Bahrain. So that kind of like helps, like we're leapfrogging a lot of stuff, because the government has sort of laid the groundwork post COVID for that digital ID. So that allows people to buy and bid and very, very safely, feel very, very safe about it. And I think those are things, because of our local nature, we understand the dynamics of the markets better than foreign player if they enter the space. And on top of that, of course, identifying the best sellers, empowering the best sellers. We've been very market driven, so most of the feature requests, most of the roadmap has been driven primarily by the sellers, and we end up recruiting those sellers, working with us, building the industry with us. So it's been just great. So that's how we've sort of identified that. And I would also add that the Gulf are very flexible people, I would say. You know what I mean? Like, in just in general, like the cultural norms are all about hospitality. We're very
Right.
social. So it's not a very rigid,
Right.
trust and safety layer. Let's say, like we allow that kind of gray area
Mhm.
sway that allowed us
Mhm.
to incorporate a huge user base in a short period of time.
Okay, nice, awesome. And when it comes to your product itself, I mean, you're focusing on collectibles, but maybe for the audience's benefit, what is the kind of stuff that is very popular
Oh,
in your categories?
so very obviously, there's a huge phenomenon happening globally with trading card games, in particular collectibles, like when you use them to collect versus play, with
Hmm.
primarily Pokemon cards and One Piece cards. Those are like really dominating the space and growing quite rapidly. On a
Hmm.
global level, the prices are skyrocketing. Even players within the space, like Collector, etc., globally, are seeing that growth. It's becoming more mainstream. I don't know if you've seen Logan Paul, etc.,
Yeah.
start to cover it. So it's kind of like entering what has been niche and very geeky for a long time is entering the mainstream, and it's really really fascinating. So that's a space that we've seen rapid growth in. There are, we've been in situations where we sold like vacuum cleaners and like
Wow.
gadgets and for like older audiences. So there's really no particular I'd say limit to live social shopping in general, like the space that we're operating in. But what we're seeing is that growth is a wave that we're also riding, and it's creating that rip and ship culture. It's creating all that, the Middle East is becoming now embodying, like, let's say, importing some of the culture from the West, and we're just experiencing that. Like, we've built the technology, and there's so many creative things that the sellers are doing within the app that we're fascinated with every day. So we kind of, like I mentioned, we kind of created the layer, ensure the community is safe, but we
Hmm.
really give the sellers the space to express themselves and to connect with others the best way that they see fit. So that's worked quite well for us so far.
Okay, nice. And when it comes to the customer behavior, you are focused on Bahrain for a start, and now you're expanding out into other geos.
Yes, yes. So initially, what we thought what Bahrain would be was really an incubation market where, technically what we do is we're building startups within startups in a way, right? Because like the use cases are quite different for example, clothing versus perfumes versus coins and currency versus each use case is different. Like
Right.
coins and currency is a very auction heavy category where like it's all about the auctions and real time bidding, whereas cards are very dopamine heavy, where you rip a pack and you see, oh, you got a hit, you didn't get a hit. Socially it's very very connected. Women in general, what we're seeing with the female categories now that we're launching, are very social shoppers, all about what's going on chat. Like if a girl says, hey, I love the smell, that just immediately drives the conversion. So each use case is different. So initially we had that thinking in place when we launched Bahrain, because of our, being in Bahrain is very easy logistically, from a
Right.
demographic point of view, etc. But there have been, because the playbook has become now like open, we actually launched from Saudi certain categories. We launched from UAE certain categories. So we're becoming like sort of like the app for the Gulf, where we can launch different categories here and there, depending on the pull of the market, like I've mentioned. So no longer is Bahrain the hub. We're still keeping it as a BPU, BPO. I apologize, like business
Right.
processing unit, let's say. But
Yeah.
in general, like all the other markets are expanding rapidly.
Right. Awesome. And maybe just even for my information and understanding, of course, I live in Dubai. I've seen the nuances and differences between different countries in the GCC. But from a buying behavior point of view, maybe it's a question for you as to what are the sort of cultural nuances between each country around trust, language, of course, language, but there's a dialect element to it for those of my listeners who are looking at the GCC as one big unit. There are
Yeah.
20 plus dialects, right? So how does that play into the whole behavior of buying and selling?
So it's a good point. Like, so I studied in the States, right? And like, remember, like, I don't know if you've been, but like, you know,
Yeah,
between like flying from California to Vegas or like to New York
right,
or like to Delaware, wherever like you're going, like there are these vast differences. But at the end of the day, there's like a common, like we're in the US, right? Like
right.
that thing, doing that. And like, I kind of like to view the GCC in particular similarly. Like we kind of rode, like even demographics wise, etc. There's been a wave from the 70s of like, since you know the industrialization and like the setup of the oil industry and everything and the petrodollar and all that stuff. Like we've all experienced this kind of like wave, and we're kind of insulated from our neighbors in a way. Like, and people don't view it that way, but like because we grew up here, we see it.
Mm,
Even culturally, you know, like Kuwait has always been like the kind of hub of, you know, media, let's say pop culture, just
mm,
comedy, etc. You know, acting, all that. Um, and like Saudi has kind of is the beacon, right? Like
mm.
or Mecca is. So like there's all these, you know, things going on, but there's definitely a lot of nuance even within Saudi alone. Like
Mm.
there's the vastness of Saudi. There's you know, there's three major, let's see, areas: west, east, and central, and then
Right.
you have the UAE, which also has like pretty different emirates. So I think that what we've done quite well with Scene, luckily, and we're getting this feedback, is we've kind of touched on the commonalities between us, and that
Mm,
kind of like broke a lot of barriers and also enabled sellers. Because initially, where sellers were really limited was like their geographic access. Like Kuwaiti sellers were selling to Kuwaitis, Emiratis were
mm.
selling to Emiratis. By breaking that barrier, like it really created a really great network effect, and that's one of the advantages of Scene. So,
Exciting.
you know, touching on nuances, I'd say there's also a huge expat population here that grew up here that consider it home. That
Yeah.
we're also working on, you know, making it work for them, because as you know, live shopping is very social and the language matters, right? So
Yes.
if you're not from the region, you don't speak Arabic, you go in and there's a live stream going on, you know, you're not going to know what's going on, right? So we're trying now to kind of balance out, you know, Western sellers as well, and balance that out, because expats represent what, 50% of the population here,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that we're cognizant of, and we're working towards, you know, addressing and creating like an environment for all, you know. So that's one
Awesome.
of our, yeah, one of our values.
Nice. Yeah, that's interesting insight. Uh, Shifting gears a little bit on the product and tech side of things, where does I mean, obvious question. We probably get this a lot from investors, stakeholders, customers. But how do you use AI currently in your stack?
So you know the memes that come out with like AI and like the CEO who wants to throw AI at everything because like it's the next big fad. But no, like I personally, like just on a personal level, use AI on a daily basis, right? Like I
Right.
think like it probably ate away 60% of my Google searches. And
Yeah.
it's also like I use it as a sounding board. As you know, like we drive around between different Gulf countries. So in that like 5 hour drive, I open like cloud is my new thing now. And like I have like a back and forth, use it as a sounding board. So just on a personal level. Now on the business level, I think what the biggest impact has come is from the development side. Our CTO Khalid, co-founder, amazing guy, has
Mhm.
incorporated AI quite well in building dashboards, great features for us, identifying bugs. Like it's just been a game changer, it's a multiplier.
Mm.
And similarly for the trust and safety layer, KYC, you know, fulfillment, like identifying like delays, etc. AI has also been quite instrumental there. I think it's only going to evolve, and we're starting to grasp like the potential of it. I think where AI is not going to really work in this region in particular, but maybe
Mm.
I could stand to be corrected, is, you know, I
Mhm.
don't know if you've seen in China, it's reached a level where like there's major influencer sellers that like use an AI version
Avatar.
of themselves to sell
Yeah.
live, like what do you call it, like a
Avatar
uh,
version. Yeah.
avatar. Exactly. I don't personally like, part of our like USP, part of our experience is like the authenticity that you're looking at a real person. So I don't see that working out. Like I don't see that happening in this region. I could be wrong. Like there's a lot of innovation coming out from the region. Maybe some sellers will eventually do it, But for the meantime, we don't see AI going to that direction, but definitely in terms of like just operations, product, trust and safety, all that, like definitely there's so much room for growth, and we're doubling down on that.
Right. Okay. Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the areas to just share with the audience that, there's a lot of focus and emphasis on AI from a software development point of view. But what AI cannot replace is what Hisham and I are having on this call is a live video recording of the podcast, right? So AI can never replace that. Sure, you can have a digital twin of Hisham or myself, but that authenticity or trust cannot be replaced. So that also feeds into the whole live video attention economy sort of concept. That, I mean, this is a thesis that we have, is that in the world of AI, such experiences of live shopping with authentic connections or live sports or similar are only going to become more valuable.
Yeah.
uh, so that feeds into what the scene focus areas are. So
hundred
yeah.
percent. Like you touched on a very important point. Like I think, especially with the new, like there has become a realization that we're sort of like drifting away from human connection, right? Like
Right.
there's a good example of chess, right? Like where AI and chess like surpass human beings, right? Like 20
Yeah.
years ago or something. I don't remember like the test, but it just like kept going. AI just kept improving, and AI started playing against AI. But nobody wants to watch AI versus AI, right? Like
Exactly.
the human in us is what makes us unique, and
Yeah.
uh, what's the word for it? Like you want to connect with others. Like that's the whole point of the app. Like it's about
Yes.
connecting with like-minded people. It's not only about the products that you're selling, right? And those social components of the experience is what makes the experience unique. And you touch on a very good point. Like the new generation now are becoming more into analog. I don't know if you're noticing there's
Right.
a global trends happening with thrifting, with collecting of
Yeah.
records. People want to go back to that, like versus your algo that will just pick songs for you. You just want to put like a record, put it on a
Yeah.
record player, and listen to the whole thing. And
Yeah.
there's more, people are moving more towards experiences versus just transactions. And
Correct. Correct.
we're touching on that gap quite well.
Absolutely. And no, 200%. And Hisham, we just thinking about the times we live in, and the last, ever since Feb 28th, today is May 18th, we're recording this, but it's been a volatile time to say the least, right? In
Yeah.
terms of building anything. You're building a startup. I'm building a fund. Like, we see this uncertainty hit us in the face day in and day out. What has it been like for Seed? I know you guys announced a big fundraise during
Yeah.
this period, so congratulations. But what's been the experience?
Oh wow. So the idea to build a startup has always been in my mind. Like I've always wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And like I've had quite a few failed startups before. So this one is the serious one where okay, we're gonna drop everything, we're gonna do it. But like we did it during a time where the capital environment like just went south, right? Like this was 2023, 2024, where like capital's dried up. A lot of consumer apps were shutting down. Fires happening across the board, firing, and angel investors very, very cynical, very like it's all about profitability. And you're building a marketplace for consumers across the Gulf. So ambitious, right? Like just make a SaaS fintech play, and just like AI was a big fad. It is still during the time. So
Right.
we're really going against like a lot of conventional notions, I'd say. And then the war happens, right? Like this has been like they call it like playing the game in ultra hard.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. But in and of itself, like I'd say, it's done two things. One is like it really cleared the landscape from the players that were doing it for, let's say, the wrong reasons, or like the capital environment helped them, versus actually creating real PMF and getting customers in, and really being very, your growth is truly organic, right? You're not pumping growth via like referral schemes or whatever, like marketing tactics, right? That's one. And it really made us very disciplined on our path to profitability, on even like hiring, right? Like we've been very selective about the people we bring in, how to grow the business. And I'd say 3 was the uncertainty was crazy, but at the same time, because of the nature of this let's say war, people were very much in their houses on their phones all the time. So Scene sort of became like let's say part of the daily schedule, and that kind of drove user adoption even higher. So similar to COVID in a way, it's kind of like a COVID period. We really hope that it's the end of that, but in a nutshell, we were affected a bit by some of the damage that was inflicted on some of the AWS infrastructure around us. But generally speaking, like it's been I dare say net positive on the business because of our ability to quickly drive user adoption. And and we were quite focused on doing, there's nothing better during like times of crisis and uncertainty where you're just busy doing something that
Yeah.
you're really passionate about. And I think we've been incredibly blessed to pick a let's say a business that's insulated from these external events to a certain degree.
Right, right. Oh, that's great to hear, man. Appreciate you sharing that insight for myself and the audience. However, I think it's also it's basically, I think COVID taught us that when there's a pandemic or a war or similar, then things around video, sports. Again, going back to the part about the importance of such businesses in our economy is that usually when there's uncertain time, then live streaming of commerce or video or entertainment, sports, etc., the skyrocket. So I think I'm sure there's some data out there. I don't have a report in front of me, but I'm sure there's a report out there which has some sort of a correlation between uncertain times and how businesses like Scene can take off during this time. It's not something that we wish for, but that's the result that comes out of it sometimes.
No, agree. And I think there's a certain escapism towards like, just connecting with people that you like. And like, I bet like consumption of video games, all that like went up, right? Like you think that way because like it's you're sitting at home the whole time. There's a lot of uncertainty. School's out, like, a
Right.
lot of workplaces were affected. But I have to say a shout out, like sincerely, to the governments and how they've handled the situation here,
Absolutely.
from a security standpoint, from a trust, like from a safety standpoint for us as individuals here, that we were able to conduct our business throughout. Like we were ordering our coffees and our food. Like really,
Yeah.
if you think about it effectively, like we haven't really experienced a real war. Like this is the
No,
poshest
yeah.
war that you can really think
Correct.
about. And I think kudos to that like level of preparation and level of dedication that's come from that. So across the Gulf, right? Like with no exceptions, like all the countries have dealt with it in their own ways very, very well. So
Yeah.
I'd say like from an external level, it looks like very, very scary because of the media and how they portray things. But internally here, Scene's been running and things have been going well. People are getting their, video games and Pokemon cards and collectibles, and it's been great. So, all we can say is gratitude, right? Like, and we hope like now, I think there's a moment of like growth for the region in general, with what's happened. And another great sign I'd say, Vinit, is like all the foreigners, let's call them expatriates, whatever you want to call them, that ended up staying here during this
Mhm.
period of crisis. It would really show you like it's home, like
Yeah.
it's home for a lot
Absolutely.
of people.
Absolutely. It's home. Absolutely. You said it right. No, great, man. I guess last question, and this has been amazing. Thank you for the insights. What's the roadmap for the next 12, 24 months for Scene?
Oh man, it's almost too ambitious, I'd say. So there's certain playbooks, like I learned from my ex boss, where you conquer a city, you do it fully, and then you move on, right? But at the same time, like I'm very big in the ready, fire, aim culture, where
Okay.
you just spread across as much as possible, and then like our go-to-market guy says, like you make the fire and you put it out later, versus being prepared for everything. So
Right.
we have a lot in store. I think there's going to be a direction towards localizing each market now. That
Hmm.
there's dedication towards each market in terms of not only the inputs, let's say the live streamers, the categories, the user experiences, the nuances in payments and logistics, etc. compliance with regulations internally. As we grow, we're getting more noticed. We recognize that we need to also up our processes, etc. So there's that hyper locality, and of course there's the expansion into different categories. And similar to the Whatnot Play, I've been following those guys, an amazing journey that they've done. They sort of like taking categories on top of each other to avoid, any shocks that would happen per category, or any seasonality that might, transpire from, like, Pokemon is very, very much, for example, release driven, the growth from it, right? Like if there's a release, then there's growth in that category. So we're sort of like building that all those layers. And I'd say there's a lot of hyper locality that we intend to do in the coming year that's going to really push the user experience to make it a very, very uniquely Khaliji app. Like we've been doing that well, but I think we could do a lot better there as well. So, we have our own identity, and we want to push innovation in our own way. So stay tuned. We have a lot that we still haven't, unleashed, let's say.
Amazing. Hesham, thank you for your time, man. This has been really insightful, enjoyable. Wishing you the best for the next 12, 24 months and the future.
Appreciate it, Vinod. Great connecting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.